Alright everyone, I am back, and this time I'm streaming live. Who knows if anyone will actually show up, but in the meantime I'm going to basically be doing the same thing that I did with the videos yesterday. I'm going to be reading through the story as I have it written so far. This is again my lost story that apparently I last edited 17 years ago, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on in this story as we go. Let me see here, can I... Yeah, there we go. I was going to say, I can get rid of the page break space there. But yeah, I'm going to be looking through here. Couple of thoughts as I get started here. Just kind of thinking about the story since yesterday. The main things that we're seeing so far, for as far as it being very old, are the somewhat silly, and as I described it, dumb things that happen in this story. I described it yesterday to somebody as being dumb in kind of a comfort food way. And what I mean by that is that it kind of reminds me of like old children's TV shows or something like that, where there is something, a plot of some sort that you want to happen. A plot beat in particular, and to get it to happen, you decide that you're going to throw in a whole bunch of different events that may or may not actually make sense. So in this case, we have me wanting to get this, get these scientists in their facility that are turning people into animals, and so I have to figure out how I'm going to get there. And so I came up with the, apparently the energy crisis. Now, I was thinking about this, and I'm not entirely certain if I am correct in my assessment, because I haven't really remembered a whole lot of what's in this book since the last time that I recorded a video. But I was thinking that I probably have it in some part in the story that we find out the scientists were never actually in this for the energy crisis for transportation, because it is kind of just a dumb idea. And I mean, considering all the things that we found out that our government has been funding in the meantime, I mean, hey, maybe the scientists didn't have to hide out and do things on the down low. Maybe they could just have asked for funding, and maybe they would have gotten it. Who knows? But yeah, it's kind of what we're looking at here. We got the excuse of the energy crisis to get us to the point where we have these scientists working on these probably unethical things in the background. One second. But anyway, we are here at the beginning of Chapter 3 now. At the end of the last chapter, Michael, I believe it was Richard, and this is how much I've forgotten. Yeah, Richard. Michael, Richard, and Jessica have all been tranked. At least that's what I am pretty sure happened, because they just saw somebody on their walk, and then they got tried to run away. But Michael, at the very least, got hit by a dart of some sort, it seems. So here we are. And we're going to start reading Chapter 3, Strange Surroundings. As I said at the end of the last video, my general plan here is to pretty much try to read straight through Chapter 3. I might make some riff track sort of comments here and there, but for the most part, want to just basically read it like an audiobook. And then if I have any comments at the end of the process, then I'll come back and do that. But first off, we're going to start out here in Chapter 3, Strange Surroundings. When he finally came to, Michael couldn't see a thing. At first he thought that he was just a little slow coming to, but it became clear to him that this wasn't so after a few moments of laying on the ground dazed. Finally regaining his composure, he rolled over and pushed himself up onto his knees. He looked around in the blackness and soon located a line of light in the far corner. He shook his head, unable to figure out what it was. As he put his hand to the floor, however, the answer became obvious. Concrete, he whispered to himself. Okay, I'm looking here. Sorry. Concrete, he whispered to himself. I'm in a building. Oop, I forgot. Close quotes. He looked at the line of light for a moment. A door, he said to himself, moving towards it. As he came to it, he started at the bottom and worked his fingers up the door, feeling his way along it. He stopped when he reached shoulder height, then scanned across it again. No doorknob? Then it hit him. The texture was strange. It was made of an uneven metal. A garage door? He asked doubtfully. He shook his head violently. This really doesn't strike me as a garage. That's artificial light out there. No, not a garage. He felt the door again, then gave a quick estimate as to the door's width. Suddenly it came to him. He felt over the door again, carefully this time. Yes, a storage area. He walked carefully in the direction opposite the light, walking until he reached an obstruction. He felt along it. Sure enough, at about waist height, he found a definite separation. It wasn't a wall. He took a step to the right, then a shaky step forward. He grinned as his hand found nothing in front of him. A storage area, most definitely. Once again, getting the sensation of not knowing what I've written. But this time I'm getting that sensation about what in the world Michael just found, because I do not have any clue. So that's what this place is, came a voice from his right side. He whirled around, but it didn't take him long to find out that it was a futile gesture. He couldn't see anything anyway. Please define just who we are, Michael said shakily. I can't account for your part of we or us or whatever you want to call it, but for my part, I'm Richard Carson, came the voice. Immediately, Michael relaxed. So, we're still together, he said to himself. Then to the voice, he said, I'm Michael Stone. A pleasure to remake your acquaintance. So we weren't separated after all, the voice responded. Then, a little bit louder, he called, Jessica! There was no response. Where's Jessica, he asked. I haven't seen or heard her, said Michael. I didn't really expect an answer to that question. I was sort of talking to myself, responded Richard. Just trying to be helpful, offered Michael. Thanks, came the sarcastic response. There was a quiet sound of movement beside Michael, followed by the squeak of rubber soles on the concrete floor. Where are you exactly? Richard asked. Michael reached through the darkness in the direction that his friend's voice came from. He almost immediately felt the touch of Richard's clothing. Right here, he said, grabbing his friend's shirt and giving him a small tug towards him. He felt the larger man take a stumbling step forward, then regain his balance. Thanks, the voice came. Now what? What's going on, anyway? I don't know. First things first, we find a way out of this place. As for what's going on, it seems a lot like a kidnapping to me, apart from the lack of rope around our wrists and ankles. Michael started off slowly towards the door, dragging Richard along for the ride. Strangest kidnapping I've ever heard about, commented Richard. Comma and period. The first day I meet you, I get kidnapped. This happen to you often? Also, single quote. Okay. Enough riff tracks. Michael ignored him. They had reached the door in only a few seconds. Immediately, Michael began running his hand along the side of the door. He mumbled to himself as he did. What are you looking for? Richard asked. The button to open the door, Michael responded. In places like these, there's generally a button on the right side of the door. Chances are, we find the button, we get out. He searched for a few more minutes, every now and then running his hand back over a spot that he thought he had felt something. It was always a false lead. I don't get it, Michael said. It should be within a foot of the door and no more than 4 feet from the ground, but I can't find it. He played his hands around the area again, but came up empty. He stepped back, considering for a moment. As he was standing there, however, the light under the door suddenly faded, then returned, before fading again. Michael stared at it for a moment, then whispered, There's someone in front of the door. They stood silently for a moment, and then the door slowly opened, revealing a hallway lit with bright fluorescent bulbs. They squinted in the bright light to see exactly who was there. They could make out 4 figures, but the specifics were blurred in the bright light. 2 of the people walked forward, and taking them each by the arms, they pushed them out into the hallway. Michael tried to see who they were, but his eyes failed him. Nothing was visible to him in the glare that the bright light caused. He finally gave up on his attempts to see anything definite, and was content to go where the men decided to take him. Sorry, my dog is drinking in the corner if you're hearing background noise. They guided them along at first, but soon the 2 of them got the idea and walked ahead to avoid the constant prodding. I don't like this, said Richard. Me neither, said Michael. It was here that their captors finally said something. "Stop talking," came the firm order from behind them. The voice was gruff and carried the sort of tone with it that made you obey just because you didn't want to cross the voice's owner. The two of them instantly stopped talking and walked faster. However, as fast as they went, the men were right behind them. As his eyes adjusted to the light, Michael decided to make an effort to see exactly who their captors were. He shot a quick glance over his shoulder and was somewhat surprised to see that 3 of the indiscernible shapes he had seen earlier were large, stern guards. Not that this surprised him. Oh, wow, okay. I don't like this wording. Not that this surprised him. He had expected something like that. But they all carried huge guns, assault rifles, if he remembered correctly. Very specific there, Michael, thank you. Who are these guys, he thought. Then he saw who the 4th was. So Jessica was caught, he said to himself. He was about to tell Richard when they turned a corner and entered a huge room. All the walls were lined with technology. Excuse me. All the walls were lined with technology. Computer equipment was everywhere, and even more astounding, there were people working with almost all the computer terminals. The 3 were quickly ushered toward the center of the room. Right there in front of them, the largest of the computers loomed. It was gigantic, dominated most of the center of the room. Okay, that's because I misread it. It was gigantic and dominated most of the center of the room. Actually, on further inspection, it proved to consist of several terminals with men at almost all of them. Michael soon found himself standing just behind a tall man. He, like most of the others, excepting the well-armed guards, wore a white lab coat that hung loosely over a pale blue suit and black pants. He had white hair that bordered the top of his head, which was entirely bald. He wore a pair of large glasses and was squinting in a strange manner at the giant screen that stood in front of him. To Michael, it seemed that the man must have been half blind. "Dr. Kleiner, I presume?" As they came up behind the man, one of the guards broke from the group and talked quietly with him for a few moments. He then motioned for the other guards, who moved forward with their 3 captives pushed on before. As they approached, the half-blind old man considered them with his squinting gaze. Even though he was old, however, he still carried quite an air of confidence with him. The guards stopped in front of him. For a moment, there was silence. "So," the old man said slowly in a shaking voice, "these are the ones you took from the woods, eh? Quite a good job, I must say." He walked around them slowly, looking at them. Michael fidgeted uneasily. "Yes, they'll do quite nicely for our purposes." More silence. "What exactly are your purposes?" Jessica asked. Richard turned towards her and looked at her in disbelief. He had apparently failed to see her. "I demand you tell us why you kidnapped us." Michael silently marveled at how the quiet lady he had met in the woods had suddenly become such a confident woman. It's a very quick turnaround on that one. "Kidnapping? Oh no, you misunderstand us entirely. We do not intend to keep you long, and we don't intend to harm you in any way. You are to serve as test subjects for an experiment and nothing more, and it is virtually risk-free. We have already performed numerous tests," the man said. "Sounds a lot like a kidnapping to me," commented Richard. His gray eyes were fixed in an aggressive stare at the old man. He seemed liable to lash out at any moment. "Well, call it what you will," the man said. He looked suddenly and keenly at Michael. "I think I've seen you before," he slowly said. His eyes searched long and hard across Michael's face. Suddenly, his eyes sprang fully open and he gave a surprised cry. "You're Michael Stone!" he cried. 17-year-old, got a lot of notoriety for being 17, man. "Do I know you?" asked Michael skeptically. "No, but I don't think there's a man here who doesn't know you. You created the Project X simulation program," the man stated. Again, like with the dumb in amusing ways, in comfort food kind of ways. The Project X. Very important. Michael found himself locked in the stares of both his friends and the men around him. Slowly, he said, "What are you driving at?" "What am I driving at? Good heavens! The Project X simulation program is the most revolutionary physical-chemical simulator created to date." Man, old guy has some lungs. "And to think you just gave it away." The old man seemed nearly ecstatic. "What is he talking about? Not a question," inquired Richard. The old man beat Michael to the answer. "You are looking at the world's foremost genetic scientist," he said. "How could you be with him and not know this? His research papers are widely renowned throughout the scientific community. He corrected countless errors in generally accepted scientific theorems when he was 15. How could you not know who he is?" What's he talking about? Asked Richard. And what is this Project X he's talking about? What he's talking about is the main reason that I have so few friends, Michael sighed. His eyes were downcast as he recalled all that his remarkable gift had cost him already in the course of his short life. You got time, buddy, you're fine. I'm what some would call a genius, while most call me a nerd or a geek, as I have already related to you before. No one wants to be associated with a nerd. And this is happening in front of the scientist, who I'm sure is also kind of feeling, he's like, no one wants to be associated with a nerd. Well, I never. And yes, I am intentionally doing the Half-Life scientist voice. In Project X, Richard probed further. I knew that word, and I still messed it up. Michael gave a slight smile. It would have been unnoticeable had it not been for the stark contrast that the expression was to his anterior mood. Unnecessarily complicated word. Oh crap, where did I go? Here I am. Project X was a computer program I developed for a project my senior year of college. It simulates the effects of chemical and physical stimuli on different organisms, including humans. He looked at the ground, obviously deep in thought. Presently, he looked up at the old man in front of him. Dr. Robert Manchester, I presume, he asked. Yes, indeed, but I thought you said you didn't know me, the man said in surprise. I don't. A little more than half a year ago, I was contacted by one Jacob French. Funny thing is, I think I actually know somebody named Jacob French who I would have met since the writing of this. I was contacted by one Jacob French, an FBI agent who was in charge of a high-security government investigation. He came to me because he wanted me to remove my program from the internet. When I asked why, he told me that a former government scientist, Robert Manchester, and a group of R&D scientists had been working together on a project that was meant to revolutionize the transportation industry as a whole. Holy crap. How long is that sentence? Giving the Apostle Paul a run for his money. When it was discovered, however, that it was to achieve this through the genetic manipulation of humans into other animals, the project was disbanded. Little aside again, but this being Michael and Michael being Michael, I guess he would probably talk like an absolute nerd. Man, I wrote some long sentences here. So, back to Michael's speech. It was discovered later that the project had been continued against direct orders, and all personnel associated with the project were relieved of their duties. Michael stopped for a moment to look at the scientist, who seemed to have lost some of his enthusiasm after Michael stopped speaking. Do I hit far from the mark? Michael queried presently. No, in fact, you are completely correct, the old man sighed. Okay, no. You are completely correct. The old man sighed. I will finish. It was discovered later that the project had made use of secret underground facilities to hold test subjects for the experiments. That was when the investigation began. All men who had worked on the project were to be taken and held for the damage that the experiments had caused. The old man fell silent again. Then he looked up with a fire lit behind his eyes. But they couldn't find us. We had already settled into our new facility. From here we have continued our work, and we have perfected our original formula, as well as laying the groundwork for new changes. Not only that, we saw the true potential of our formula, and after perfecting the formula, we were able to change the injection into a gas form. Then we sold it as a weapon to anyone who would buy it. And how they bought it, just think. You could take an area of enemy territory the size of the blast area of an atomic bomb. Boy, that's a long thing. You could take an area of enemy territory the size of the blast area of an atomic bomb without destroying any buildings. You could bomb the area, then just move in, while your enemies are reduced to animals in body and mind. Funny thing is, with all the other things I don't remember at all, as soon as I read this sentence, I remembered that, because apparently I thought that was quite clever. I don't know why the blast area of an atomic bomb. That's still how you're dispersing the gas that far, but, you know. I guess it was really concentrated. And mind? Questioned Michael. Before it was just bodily change, or so it was supposed to be. The old man gave a wide smile. Things have changed since then. If the people retain their minds after the change, then they could still resist. With their minds changed, they run from you when you come. Anyway, our sales were so successful that we soon were able to hire our own troop of security guards with the money, as you can see. He gestured to the men who had escorted the prisoners when they came in. You, my friends, will help us test a few of our new formulas. They should be ready shortly. You have to be crazy, yelled Richard. You can't just change people into animals. Of course we can't, responded the man. It takes a great deal of work for us to accomplish it. That's not what I meant, Richard said angrily. Oh, temper, temper, the man said with a soft chuckle. Once again, I keep on missing quotation marks. I think I have the perfect idea what you will be. With your temper, a tiger sounds just right. I wonder why. He was suddenly cut off. A loud alarm began to sound inside the facility. A voice came over an unseen loudspeaker. Security breach, Sector 11. All available security personnel, please report to the area. The scientist turned to the guards. The experiments will have to wait, he said. Man, I'm bad at opening quotes after breaks. Get these back to their cells at once. They were soon rushing down the halls. The guards were very careful to make sure that the prisoners didn't get away. Still, a plan was forming in Richard's mind of how they could escape. It was just a matter of time. All right, so that's chapter 3 of The Tremendous Trio, Trial by Fire. I don't know why I said it like that, but it was fun. Once again, that one sentence where the scientist mentions the blast area of an atomic bomb, that one, as I started reading it, I was like, oh, I know exactly where this is going. Which is funny, because just before that, as the scientist was talking about changing it to a gaseous form, I was like, oh, I completely forgot about that. I thought, my vague recollection was that it was going to be injected. And I think that was because of the prologue. I think I basically just seeded that in my own mind as we were reading through the beginning here in chapter 1, which honestly, if I was going to keep it, it would become the prologue. Though almost definitely I wouldn't keep it. I would basically take the entire first chapter and a half and smash it down into the following few chapters. But once again, this is just another part of the interesting sensation of reading a book I forgot I wrote, is that I'm getting slight flashes of memory, slight flashes of, oh, okay, I remember I wrote that, or I remember details here, details there, one thing or another. But being able to still be, like, blindsided by something that I wrote, it's like, oh, wait, I thought I was doing it some other way. I did think it was interesting at the beginning here where Michael, for some reason, after assuming that he's been kidnapped, which, I mean, pretty safe assumption with the situation, if he remembers being tranked, and like, yeah, okay, you've been kidnapped, that makes sense. But right after that, he assumes that, with his hands not secured, that there's going to be a button by the door that he can just press and open. Just like, even if you're not expecting, random science fiction facility number 8, you should probably still be expecting, if your kidnappers didn't bother binding your hands, that they probably just made sure you're in a room where you're not going to be able to just get out by pressing a button. That's just my opinion, which is kind of funny because it is my opinion, which is as contrasted with my opinion 17 years ago. So, yeah, super genius Michael decides that he's been kidnapped, so what does he do? Yeah, let's find the button and open the door. I also am kind of trying to think in the back of my head why they wouldn't be restrained. It seems like I can't think of a plot reason outside of maybe to give the characters a better chance of escaping later. Maybe I was thinking that they got the armed guards, so the scientists are going to be incautious. They're not going to take care to keep these people under wraps. They're going to figure, we can always shoot them if they go somewhere. Yeah, I mean, fair enough, but even so, just like, if you're carrying a weapon around somebody who is able-bodied, there's always even the slight possibility, even if you're very well trained, that they could take your weapon from you. And I'm sure the fact that I mentioned in Chapter 2 that Jessica had her black belt in Kung Fu, I'm sure that's not going to come up in any situation in the near future with regards to the guards' weapons. But, yeah, interesting. I did recall as well, as we were reading through there, the Project X simulation program. I would not have recall that I gave it that name, but I did remember as we were getting to it that the program was basically freeware. I believe the original version of this file, the oldest version of this file, is a WPS file, which means this is probably during my LibreOffice era. So maybe I just had like a free open source software on my mind at the time. But yeah, still very interesting. I'm wondering, I actually thinking, once again, I did not read any further after my last recording. So I was thinking about the story here this morning at work. I work in a warehouse, which, kind of ironic with the situation that my characters find themselves in here. But at the warehouse, I get a lot of time to just work by myself, and so I can just think. And so I was thinking about the story, trying to kind of piece thoughts together and remember anything I might have hidden in the recesses of my mind. And I actually thought I remembered that they were going to wake up and they were already animals. So I was wrong about that recollection as well. So yeah, once again, it's going to be interesting here as we continue forward to see what I remember. But yeah, I think we're just going to continue into chapter 4 here in just a moment. I'm going to set a bookmark here on the YouTube video. I'll add some chapters in later so that we can help anybody who might actually, for some reason, who knows, come back and feel interested in reading over this, or listening, I should say. So thanks again for watching, and if you're still here in the live stream, you can keep on watching, and I'll be reading chapter 4 in a moment. Make sure everything's running good. Looks like all of our audio settings are good. All right. All right, everybody. If anybody's actually going to be watching this video in the future, welcome. And anybody who's still here in the live stream at the moment, you are also welcome, though you aren't coming back in. You're still just here. But we are here in Chapter 4, Running the Gauntlet. Just finished reading Chapter 3, and our trio of heroes have been taken to the head scientist of the project, and learned a little bit more. Apparently Michael created Project X, some kind of a physical chemical simulator that is able to run detailed simulations on animals and humans within the computer. And so like he had some involvement in creating the simulation programs that the scientists are using. But at the end of that little exchange with the head scientist where they're learning all this, they were being escorted back to their cells because there was an alarm going off in the facility. So we are currently heading back to the holding areas, and so we'll pick up reading here, Chapter 4, Running the Gauntlet. As the procession ran down the halls toward the holding areas, Michael noticed Richard make a brief exchange with Jessica. At first it was hardly noticeable, but it became clear before long that Richard and Jessica were now trying to outpace the guards. They soon had taken a slim lead, and the guards were straining to keep up. Finally, as they approached the corner, Richard and Jessica veered off around it. As they did, two of the guards started running faster and rounded the bend just a fraction of a second after the prisoners had. As they disappeared around the corner, there was a cry, then one of the guards fell back around the corner. Taking this as his cue... Is that the right cue? I think it's C-U-E-Q. Michael spun away from the remaining guard. The guard pulled out his pistol, but before he could fire it, Michael saw a blur of motion. The guard was taken down from behind. Michael stared in dumbfounded amazement at the sight behind the guard. The others were already... Well, okay. That was not well worded. Michael stared in dumbfounded amazement at the sight behind the guard. Yeah, that's just going to need it completely rephrased. The others were already unconscious. Most surprising of all was the fact that Jessica was the one that had taken the last guard down. I know Kung Fu. Hurry up, I wouldn't be surprised if that last one sent off an alarm. Probably set off. We've got to get moving if we don't want to get caught, she said. Richard already was messing with a pistol that he picked up picked off of a guard. He had taken a guard's possessive gun belt and was rooting. I'm sorry for pausing so much, but man, me and my past self are not getting along as far as wording is concerned here. So, he had taken a guard's gun belt and was rooting over the body for ammunition. Finally finding all that he wanted, he took one of the assault rifles that the guards had been holding and looked it over. Empty, he said. Looked as they were just trying to intimidate us. Here. He tossed one of the pistols toward Michael, who caught it awkwardly in his hands. He looked at it carefully. Which he? I'm guessing this is Michael. Does it matter that I don't know how to use one of these things? Asked Michael. It's easy. Just point at what you want to shoot and squeeze the trigger, explained Richard. And don't point it at anything you want to keep, he continued. By now he had walked up beside Michael and, hooking his finger around the tip of the pistol, he pulled it away from Michael's face. It's not healthy to look your gun straight on. I told you I didn't know how to use it, Michael retorted. Be that as it may, Richard said, if we want to get out of here, I suggest we get started. I wouldn't be surprised if they already, once again, wording. I wouldn't be surprised if they already have guards coming. Come on. With that, he headed quickly down the hallway. Wait a second, where are we going? Asked Michael. I'm still working on that problem, Richard called back. By now he and Jessica had opened up quite a good-sized lead on Michael. Holding the pistol warily away from his body, Michael followed as quickly as he could. He caught up to the others presently as they slowed down to the corner to make sure that no one was coming from the adjoining hall. I think it would be best to look for some type of map before going on, Michael said between heavy breaths. No time. We've got to get out of this place ASAP. It was Jessica who responded this time. No time? Finding a map should greatly decrease the time it will take us to find a way out. I'm sorry, but we can't risk getting caught. It would be logical for them to keep any sort of map in their more heavily guarded areas. To get in there would be like yelling, "Hey, here I am, shoot me!" We can't risk it, Jessica responded firmly. This period comma thing has happened a couple times, and I'm wondering if that was an autocorrect situation happening. Surely I didn't think that was the correct way to do it back in the day. Who knows? Michael gave in for the moment, but he still thought that they should try to find a map. Soon the trio moved on again, Richard in front, Jessica behind him, and Michael bringing up the rear. They continued like this for quite a while, walking down the featureless metal halls quietly, listening for any sound of opposing forces. Opposing forces! Half-Life. Checking the corners for enemy activity. They were surprised that they saw no guards for the first 15 or more minutes. I guess they didn't get a signal off after all, Richard whispered presently. As I'm reading here, I can't help but remember that they were running back to the holding area precisely because there was an alarm going off, so I'm kind of wondering if we're going to address that. The alarm in the room. Still, I'm surprised we haven't met with any patrols. In this sort of operation, logic would seem to dictate that they utilize regular patrols and exercise extreme caution with prisoners, or test subjects as they seem to think us. Be that as it may, we should be careful. I don't like it. It's too quiet. Maybe all the patrols were sent to assist in the escape and progress that interrupted the good doctor's plans for us, Michael said. Well, there's a little bit of a mention. All of them? That seems unlikely. A good group, yes, but not all of them. There should be someone around here. Suddenly, Richard stopped, listening. Soon they could all hear slow, shuffling footfalls coming from a hallway in front of them and to the left. Without a word, Richard motioned for the others to follow him. They headed for a door to their right. No light could be seen out of the door, so Richard decided that it was safe enough to try. All three of them were tense, so much so that it seemed that every slight noise was amplified tenfold. Richard quietly opened the door and stepped inside, swiftly followed by his two companions. As soon as they were inside, Richard silently closed the door. They waited for several long moments until the footsteps were just outside the door. They watched as a small ribbon of light that showed under the door was interrupted by the shadows of the person's feet, and then the footfalls continued to fade away, continuing down the hall. It's still not safe, Richard whispered quietly. He may be gone, but then he might not. Either way, we're not taking any risks. He settled down, leaning against the metal wall of the room. Michael looked around, considering the strange machinery that filled most of the room. Looks like a computer complex, he commented. A very old computer complex, he added after some more consideration. Looks abandoned, but we might be able to get something out of it. He looked over the controls carefully, pressed a few buttons, then sighed. Dead. Power's been cut off for some time, if my knowledge of dust accumulation is at all trustworthy. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, said Jessica sarcastically. Besides, I don't see a place for it to get power. Indeed, Michael mused. He moved over to where a stack of dusty boxes was set and pulled them away from the wall. I thought so, he said to himself. Pulling the boxes farther away from the wall, he revealed a large power outlet. That's quite a bit larger than your average wall outlet, Richard observed. And with good reason, Michael added. This thing needs more power than your average computer. He continued rummaging around, then stood back up. Well, shoot, he said, with an edge of disappointment in his voice. Looks like they got rid of the power cord. He kicked the bulk of machinery. There goes that idea, he mumbled. Would have been a help, Richard said. For now, we're wandering blind with no clue how far we are from the exit, or whether we're even on the ground floor. Well, I'm pretty sure this facility is a single-story building, said Michael. As for how far it is to the exit, I can't tell you. How do you figure this is a single-story building? Asked Richard. For one thing, storage facilities like this one rarely have many floors, at least not to my knowledge. For another thing, I doubt they would want to have this project inside a skyscraper. They would probably want something that didn't draw too much attention. That makes sense. Any ideas of where to go or what to do next? Asked Richard. No, we need a map, a blueprint, floor plan, something to show us where the exit is, Michael said pensively. Well, we'll look for one later. For now, we need to get moving, said Richard. He opened the door slightly and peeked out. Clear, he said. Let's go. Soon they were heading down the hallways as they had been before, now checking every now and then to see if there was anything in any of the rooms to show them where they were and where they should go. The corridors were becoming increasingly dark. Now, instead of the blinding glare from the overhead fluorescent bulbs, there were frequent dead bulbs and a few flickering ones that seemed unable to decide whether they should work or not. Finally stopping, Richard quietly whispered, "We must have taken a wrong turn. I don't see why they would let their facilities degrade into such disrepair." Too true, commented Michael. He looked around. Still, the lights are on, however few of them there are in this sector. I believe that they do use this sector of the facility, but do not see it necessary to keep it in good repair. I think it would be a lot safer to check some of the rooms now. Richard concurred, and they were soon searching through abandoned room after abandoned room. They found nothing to support the claim that this area of the facility was in use. It was very odd, commented Jessica. These rooms look like they haven't seen a person for several years. They most likely haven't, said Michael. Anything that hasn't been touched by these scientists and their hired guns would probably look like this. They entered another room and looked around it with a flashlight that Jessica had salvaged from one of the guards. Still, there was barely anything to indicate a human presence had occupied the rooms. It's eerie, the silence in here, said Richard. His own voice was hushed, as though he were forced to keep it silenced by the quiet that pressed him from every side. It's as if there wasn't a creature around. You would expect that some pests would have moved in by now, at least, but no, there's nothing. A very good point, muttered Michael. Something's wrong about this place. He opened a cardboard box that was sitting against one of the walls of the room they had just entered. Rummaging about in it, he pulled something out. Looking it over, he handed it to Richard, who did the same. It was a small plastic cylinder about 4 inches in length and maybe half an inch in diameter. He handed it to Richard. Yeah, he did that twice in this paragraph. What do you make of that? Asked Michael. Richard flipped it over in his hands and shook it. Something rattled inside. A container, but you knew that, he commented quietly. The question is, what does it contain? Yep, I forgot another quotation mark. Actually, sorry, it would be over here. Uviha. He flipped it over again and looked at it closer. It was made of 2 joining parts that connected in the middle. How it was connected was not obvious by first inspection. Sorry for the chuckle in the middle there, but I was just imagining that this is one of those groan tubes, and so if he flips it over, it's just like if we're making a movie of this manuscript, this is one of the outtakes. That's shockproof plastic, Michael said. Well, so it doesn't rattle much. It seems to me that they want whatever it is to be protected. He took the container from Richard and gave it one more look. Then he placed one hand on either side of the seam where the 2 parts connected. He gave it a pull, but it wouldn't budge. Changing tactics, he twisted the tube, one hand in one direction, the other the opposite. Very slowly, the seam widened until the 2 sides came apart. Michael dumped down a thin glass vial into his hand from inside the container and held it up to one of the few functioning lights. It contained a pale brown liquid. It seemed to me that this is one of the results of their experimentation, he said. What kind of results are you thinking? Asked Richard. If used correctly, this would probably manipulate our genetic code so as to bring about the change that the scientists desire in their test subjects. In short, it would probably turn us into some animal, he said. So this is what they're trying to use to change people into animals? Asked Jessica, regarding the vial with curiosity. If my guess is correct, most likely, responded Michael. He turned the vial about in his hands, then, in a sudden motion, threw it at the far wall. It hit the wall but didn't break, bouncing off and rolling back towards the three of them instead. Double period. Shatterproof glass as well, he commented, picking up the vial. Why'd you do that? Asked Richard. I already guessed it to be shatterproof, Michael said. And besides, we don't want to get any of this sold, so if it had broken, it wouldn't have been a loss to us. But why shatterproof plastic if the vial was shatterproof as well? He mused. Picking up the two halves of the container, he slipped his fingers into the hole that the vial had occupied. He gave a small exclamation and pulled out a small ball, about the size of a large marble. I am mystified. I have no idea what the heck that is. What's that? Richard asked, staring at the strange black sphere. This, my friend, is a remote-controlled explosive device. This way, if the shipment was discovered, they could blow it up and make it much harder to find out what these bottles contained, Michael explained. He turned the ball over in his hand. How did you know that? Asked Richard. Doesn't look like any explosive I've seen. I haven't been laying around doing nothing for the last year. I know a little bit about explosives. He didn't strike me as one who would be really up on his explosives, commented Richard. Experimental weaponry has been one of the few weapon-related things I'm interested in, Michael said. Strange, Richard commented, but he kept his eyes on the device. How powerful is it? I'm not sure, but I'd say pretty powerful. They wouldn't want to leave anything behind if they were forced to detonate the shipment. Nothing that could be used against them at any rate. Michael picked up another one of the containers from the box and opened it. Searching inside, he withdrew a piece of material. Taking the vial that had been inside of the container, he threw it at the wall. This one shattered, leaving trails of the brown liquid trailing down the wall, searching for a crack to disappear into. Well, I'm no expert, but that vial didn't seem very shatterproof, said Richard. It's a little bit weird here. Understand that Michael picked up another vial, but the way I wrote that paragraph doesn't really get the message across. Well, I'm no expert, but that vial didn't seem very shatterproof, said Richard. This one had shock-absorbing material with it. It didn't need shatterproof glass that the other one did, said Michael. I'm sure that if we searched hard enough, we'd find a few more of the explosives hidden inside, but for now we need to head out again. They hurried down the unoccupied halls now, stopping only to search a few rooms on the way. Finally, Richard drew back in front of a door. When they opened it, they found another computer console much like the one that they had found before. This one was still connected to the strange power outlet, but they couldn't get it to do anything. Michael began to check the systems one at a time. Soon he found something, and he began to work on quickly. It seemed as though he had forgotten all about the other two until he called back. Richard, you wouldn't happen to have a knife on you somewhere, would you? Yes, in fact I do, said Richard. He pulled out a folding pocket knife and, with a flick of his wrist, locked the blade in its upright position. Handing it to Michael, he waited while his friend messed around with the computer's wiring. Finally, Michael stood up and pressed the power button. With a whir, the computer started up. For the first few seconds, the whirring grew louder until it finally settled into a steady throb. I don't know what we can expect from this, Michael said. By the looks of it, this thing is used to controlling... Okay, it's technically correct, but not how I would word it. Not how I would word it today. It is literally how I worded it 17 years ago. By the looks of it, this thing is used to controlling... Gotta read it correctly. By the looks of it, this thing is used to controlling machinery, not giving information. Let's just hope that it does both. Once again, forgotten quotation mark. He was soon interfacing with the computer. He quickly typed several commands until finally it gave him what he wanted. All right, an original floor plan. This should give us an idea of where to go from here. Another missing quotation mark. The floor plan was obviously old, but they were able to figure out approximately where everywhere they had been was. The place where Michael and Richard had been detained, they identified as one of the refrigerated storage areas. Jessica identified a similar room as the one she had occupied. The room where they had met the scientist had been the main storage area. They were now in what had been a much larger room, but had apparently been partitioned at some time in the past. They soon found out why there were no guards in the area. They were quite away from the exit. Actually, if they hadn't been trying to escape detection, they could probably have walked there easily in 5 minutes. At their current pace, with all the stops to check the connecting corridors, they figured they would reach the nearest exit in about half an hour, if nothing happened. They were soon on their way. Michael, who had the best memory, had memorized all the turns that they needed to make to get to the exit. They now exercised even more caution if that was possible. None of them spoke, and they all listened intently to hear if anyone was coming. Several times they thought they heard footsteps or the sound of one of the mercenaries' two-way radios, but it turned out to be just someone's overactive imagination. Imagination. Presently, Michael gave a quiet announcement. 3 more turns, he whispered quietly. Why haven't we seen any of those guards? Asked Jessica. It's anyone's guess. The important thing is we've evaded detection so far, responded Richard. Let's hope that we've escaped detection. It could always be that they're waiting for us, Michael whispered. Let's just not go there, suggested Richard. Fine by me, Jessica murmured. They turned down around the next corridor, then froze. 2 tall shadows were coming from the other direction. The 3 of them fell back around the turn. Jessica took up a position near the corner and flipped out a mirror that she had kept in her pocket. Holding it up beside her, she angled it until she could see around the corner. They're heading this way, she hissed urgently between her teeth. We need to find somewhere to hide. She slipped her mirror back into her pocket and turned to Richard. He was already heading toward a door beside them. Turning the knob quietly, he pushed it open. He motioned to the others, who followed him in. The room was dark, with none of the fluorescent bulbs to show them what was inside. Suddenly, just as the sound of boots rounded the corner, they heard a quiet sound to one side. It was unmistakably the sound of someone yawning. They'd walked right into a bunk room for the guards. They all tensed and waited anxiously for the steps to pass, but they first heard a metallic creaking behind them. Richard felt a tug on his shirt and found himself dragged back away from the sound. A hand clapped over his mouth. For a few tense moments, the steps got louder. Richard was pulled back away from the door quietly. Suddenly, just before the footsteps arrived, there was a click and the lights came on with a quiet buzzing. All at once, everything happened together. I said that twice. The man who had turned on the lights was laid low by an unexpected strike from Jessica. He fell forward into the metal wall, causing a faint echoing that hung in the air for the moment. Then there came a startled cry from the other side of the room. Whirling back around, Jessica saw there was another guard in the room. Michael released his hold on Richard, who threw himself on top of the guard. He hit the guard's head solidly with a pistol he had taken from the other guards, knocking him out cold. Jessica had locked the door, but they could hear that the guards outside had heard the commotion. There came a few quick thuds on the door. While the others were frozen in fear, Michael did his part. Hey, quiet down, will you? We're just wrestling. He received a few surprised looks from his friends. Well, keep it down, came a call from outside. All right, will do. The footsteps faded. They had bought it. Sure. Slowly, everybody let out their breath. Michael, you are officially a member of our team, Richard said quickly. Great thinking, added Jessica. Thanks, but we've got to get out of here. There'll be more guards coming at any time now, and I doubt we'll fool them quite as easily. Michael responded. He moved over to the door and opened it an inch. He looked down the hall in the direction the other guards had left it. Let's go, he said quietly. They now walked a little faster, not wanting to risk another encounter. 2 more turns. They were almost running now. They wanted out. The hall seemed to go on and on. Finally, they reached the turn. 1 more. They stopped beside the last turn. Taking a deep breath, they looked around the corner. They were stunned at what they saw. It was an exit, all right, but at least 10 guards stood in front of it. How were they supposed to get through now? They were so close to freedom, and yet so far. They didn't have 10 seconds to consider the situation. All at once, 5 of the guards started towards them. Turning around, they saw 2 more guards coming their direction from an adjoining corridor. Without thinking, they ran for the nearest door. As the guards saw them and called the alert on their radios, the 3 escapees entered the room. They were surrounded by brooms, mops, rags, and other cleaning implements. There was nowhere to go. They were trapped with nowhere to run. Dun, dun, dun! I always consider, this is just not just with my writing, but with this in particular right now as we're reading through it, I always wonder about the logistics of these facilities for facilities' sake. It is interesting that I did think, oh hey, it's a storage facility, and so we got like the storage facility stuff. But, I'm not sure how many, random winding corridors you'd have in most storage facilities. So, it's an interesting question. I'd say, repeatedly seeing the guards without the guards seeing them at first isn't the most reasonable thing. The only thing I can figure is a justification on that part is basically just to say that the guards are expecting to see guards. But we did not hear at any point in this reading today. Sorry, I was dealing with something. But we didn't see at any point in this reading where we had the alarm that was triggered shut off. And so we should probably still have guards on alert looking for whoever else was escaping. The other detail that might be a little inconvenient for this is that with the escape, even if the alarm had been turned off, with the escape alarm having been sounded previously, you're gonna have people on higher alert. So yeah, I really don't think that, hey, we're wrestling in here. I don't think that's it's gonna work. I don't. It's interesting idea that I have, but I don't think it was a good idea. But yeah, so far it's been interesting to read through here. But I think we will be hitting the more interesting stuff starting in the next chapter. 2 down, 1 to go. So question is, are 2 of them going to be captured, or are 2 of them going to escape? That's the question, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Once again, I have vague recollections, but recollections I've had previously have been incorrect, so we'll see when we get there. For now, hope everyone's enjoying this interesting little adventure and my riffs along the way. This is a bit of a longer chapter, I think. I think it was longer because the paragraphs are longer. I'm not sure if it's actually longer in pages, or in pages in... Yeah, I said that right. I think it's just longer in words. So, yeah, looks like we are getting close to halfway through, though, which, again, seems to indicate to me that we are in a... we're probably just... It's a bit on the short side, so we'll find out. We will find out how short and what the... what we get in the future. But for now, thanks anybody for watching, whether you watch this as a VOD or whether you watch this live. And yeah, once again, hope to continue the progress, continue reading through this. Let me actually check the table of contents, but I seem to remember 7 chapters. Well, I think I was remembering this. I seem to remember chapter numbers, and there aren't any chapter numbers. Let's see here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 chapters and an epilogue. I can't guarantee how long the epilogue is. 5 pages, so about 9 chapters, give or take, is the general length here. So yeah, we'll see how that goes for the moment. Everyone have a good day, and I will see you next time.